Hi, I'm back. It's been a little while again. It seems to be a couple of weeks between videos at the moment, but I think that's just the nature of the beast for me at the moment in my life. So I'm just gonna get right into it. Today I'm doing a review of book 1 of the Mistborn trilogy, The Final Empire, and also give a bit of an update on what I'm reading and what else I've been doing. So this is a book that I think I've had a little look on BookTube, and it seems like a few people read it a little while ago. So a lot of people probably have read it, but I actually heard about it first on my favourite podcast, Literary Disco, which I've mentioned before, and it wasn't the most glowing of reviews. It didn't make me want to read the book at all. It's just the first time I'd heard of it, and I hadn't realised that it was kind of critically acclaimed or popular until I heard it there, and then saw that it was on BookTube as well. I really enjoyed this book, but I don't think it is amazing. I don't think it's really something to write home about, but it is what it is, and I think it's fun. So essentially, a very brief plot synopsis. It is your archetypical fantasy book. It follows the same plot line. It's basically a bit of a battle between good and evil. But the thing that I think sets this book apart is the world building, which I think is done really well. It's brilliantly done, actually, and it's probably one of the most unique magic kind of systems that I've ever read, that I've ever really heard about either. Basically, the main characters, there's a girl called Vin, who is a teenage thief, essentially. It's set in a world that is, I suppose, similar to ours. It's a little bit medieval. Interestingly, I started reading this when I also started reading Bleak House by Charles Dickens, and I kept confusing them in my head. So I'd have like England in like the turn of the 1800s with you know, people running around doing magic, which is kind of what this book seems like to me. So I actually stopped reading Bleak House because it was just doing my head in for the moment. So I'll get back to it. But basically, it is set in a kind of ye-olde town. There's taverns and cobblestones and keeps and, you know, castles. There's basically two castes almost. So there's the Ska, S-K-A-A, who are kind of like slaves almost. They basically live as labour almost, working in farms, in fields, that kind of thing, to, you know, supply food to the cities. And the cities are basically run by the God, I've forgotten what they're, the higher society, I've forgotten what they're called, the noble classes, basically. And ruling over this is the Dark Lord, who has a very oppressive rule, kind of keeps, almost like a divide and conquer kind of thing, keeps control of the world by having these various highborn families kind of in control of things, and, you know, allowing them to fight every couple of 100 years, but basically keeping that tier of society, keeping the ones, the Ska, underneath them in check. So Vin, the hero, or the main character, is a Ska girl. She's a thief. She's lived with her brother and other thieves and kind of people in a very kind of abusive and aggressive and tough life, basically on the streets. And then she runs into Kelsier, who is the other main character in this book. Running through all of this is this fantasy system. Vin has this power, which at the start she kind of just, it's something that she has, and then as the book develops, she kind of learns more about it. Basically, people can swallow metals, so tin, steel, pewter, all sorts of things, and draw power from them, basically. So there are some people like Vin and Kelsier who are Mistborn, which means that they can swallow and use all 9 metals, and then there's others who can only use 1. So some of them include the ability to push or pull on metals, so they can kind of push on something to push themselves away from it, if that makes sense. So people can kind of like almost run up walls by pushing against a metal on a windowsill or something like that, and pushing themselves away from it, or pulling metal towards them, and kind of I suppose controlling the world like that. There's also some metals that allow people to suppress emotions or kind of increase other emotions. So anyway, look, it's a really interesting idea. I'm not doing a very good job of explaining it really, but that's kind of the magic system that there is. So along with this society where there's different tiers or castes, there's people who, most of the Mistborn, or the people who have one power, are drawn from the noble families. Said the plot is really formulaic fantasy plot. You know, there's the girl with the power learns more about her power, needs to save the world, that kind of thing. There's love, there's intrigue, there's all sorts of things. I don't think it's brilliant, as I said, but I think for a fantasy novel, it's really good. I liken it to The Wise Man's Fear, which is one of my other favourite fantasy novels. I don't think that Brandon Sanderson is in the same kind of tier as Patrick Rothfuss. I think Patrick Rothfuss actually is a brilliant writer, hands down. This guy, I think he's a good fantasy writer. And I guess it's not that I judge fantasy or science fiction differently, but I think that often what drives a science fiction or even sometimes a fantasy novel is the idea and the creativity behind it. And it's almost like that kind of takes the front seat to the writing. Whereas in the other books that I read, it's really the writing rather than the story or the plot that I'm attracted to. And I'm quite happy to read 800 pages where nothing happens if it's good writing that appeals to me. Not so with a fantasy book. If this was shit, badly written, there's no way I would have got through it. But I really enjoyed it. It was the kind of book that I would get to my desk at work and I'd just sit there and kind of keep reading paragraphs before I got to start work. One of which is I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings by Maya Angelou, just for something completely different, which I am really enjoying. It's not actually where I thought it would be, and as I'm reading, I keep forgetting that's an autobiography, but it is. I'll probably do a review of this when I'm finished. I'm about halfway and it's quite short. It's only about 300 or so pages. And it's a really good book. I actually bought this. I've been meaning to read it for years and I just hadn't. And then when she died, well, it's a pretty bad reason to be spurred on to read something, isn't it? But I just thought, okay, I just have to read it. So I did. I got this crappy little edition of it from Book Depository. I hadn't realised it was going to be so small and crap, but anyway. So that's what I'm reading. Last weekend I was really sick and I basically got out of bed at 2 p.m, went downstairs and lay on the couch and felt like I was going to die, and I started reading this, Animal Vegetable Miracle by Barbara Kingsolver, who I love. One of my favourite books is The Poisonwood Bible. I absolutely love it, and I haven't read all of her other books. In fact, I don't think I've read any of them, but I really enjoyed it. And this is a really great book. I borrowed it from the library some weeks ago. It's now quite a few weeks overdue, I think, so I didn't want to get too engrossed because I need to return it or reborrow it. But I really intend to get back into this. It's really interesting, and it's something that I've kind of been interested in for a long time, but never got around to reading it. The other one is just for something different as well. It's a cookbook. This is a book. It's a vegetable, I think it's vegetarian actually. It's a vegetable cookbook by Yotam Ottolenghi. I'm not sure how to say that. He was a columnist, I think, for the New York Times. No, the Guardian Weekend. This guy actually wrote a vegetarian column, and then people got quite upset when they realised that once he did a couple of recipes that had meat in them, and people were like, what? I thought this guy was vegetarian. He's not. He just grew up eating a lot of vegetables and has brought out this great cookbook. I am vegetarian. My husband and I are both vegetarian actually, and I don't have that many kind of inspiring cookbooks. I've got a whole bunch of vegetarian cookbooks and they're really boring, and like vegetarian lasagna, vegetarian pasta sauce, minestrone, like the crap that I've been cooking and eating since forever. I've been vegetarian since I was about 13, I think, so it's not new to me, it's not unique. I'm not trying to, find out how to make recipes without the meat. Like, how do you live without meat? I just do, and I do fine. I just kind of I don't find very many other recipe books particularly inspiring because a lot of them have very meat based. So there's not really that much that I use or, you know, could use or draw that much inspiration from. But this one so far is great. I've made a couple of things from it, and they're really, really good. And I've also learned a lot more kind of techniques, I suppose, from it, which is interesting. And I think I always want to support people who aren't even necessarily vegetarian, but just kind of putting forward information about eating more vegetables, just because it's good. That's basically what I've been reading, what I'm currently reading. I have another set of exams the week after, no god, next week actually, it's next week now. I think I've mentioned before, I've just finished my masters and I'm now a lawyer, well I'm about this far away from being a lawyer, and once I actually finish this final practical legal training diploma or whatever it is, I can then become admitted to practice. I get admitted in September. I have one more week of exams until I finish this course, and that's it. So I just have like this 1 week hanging over my head, and then I'm free, and I can actually just have a life again and not spend every spare minute either studying or feeling bad because I'm not studying, which is pretty much the way I've been feeling for the most part of the last 10 years. So that's my life at the moment. Hopefully after I've finished those exams, I'll be a little bit more present and doing more videos. I've kind of been watching videos, I haven't been commenting as much, and I feel like I've kind of lost touch with the community a bit. So I intend to get back into it, but it probably won't be for the next couple of weeks. Until then,